Captain Sarah Mitchell's hands gripped the control stick as whispers echoed through the hangar. She'd heard them all before, the snickers about her outdated helicopter, the jokes about flying a museum piece. Standing beside her modified Black Hawk, she felt the weight of every dismissive glance from her fellow pilots. "Still flying that old bird, Mitchell," Lieutenant Commander Jackson called out, his voice dripping with condescension as he walked past with his squadron. "When are they finally going to put you in something from this century?" Sarah bit her tongue. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that her helicopter wasn't what it seemed. The weathered exterior, the seemingly standard Black Hawk design, was all part of an elaborate deception. Underneath the ordinary paint job and conventional silhouette lay one of the most classified aircraft in the United States military arsenal. The briefing had been 3 months ago, in a windowless room at Groom Lake. Commander Patricia Hayes had slid the folder across the table with a severity Sarah would never forget. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels," Hayes had said. "Only 4 of these aircraft exist. 3 are stationed at Area 51. You'll be flying the 4th. Inside the folder were technical specifications that had made Sarah's eyes widen. The HH-60U Ghosthawk, a helicopter so advanced, so thoroughly redesigned from the inside out, that it represented a quantum leap in stealth technology. Modified rotor blades that operated in near silence. Composite materials that scattered radar signatures. Heat-dampening exhaust systems that made the aircraft practically invisible to infrared detection." "Why me?" Sarah had asked. Commander Hayes had smiled slightly. "Because you're good enough to fly it and humble enough not to brag about it. This bird needs a pilot who can blend in, who won't draw attention, someone the brass will overlook." Now, 6 weeks into her deployment, Sarah had mastered the Ghosthawk's capabilities. She'd flown night missions that would have been impossible in a conventional helicopter, insertions and extractions completed without a whisper, operations where the enemy never knew they'd been compromised until it was too late. Her success rate was perfect, yet officially, she was still just another rescue pilot flying an aging Black Hawk. The mockery continued. In the mess hall, younger pilots would shake their heads at her dinosaur. During flight line briefings, instructors would use her helicopter as an example of legacy systems. Sarah endured it all, knowing that every word of derision was another layer of operational security. "Lieutenant Mitchell, report to Commander Hayes immediately." The PA system crackled one afternoon. Sarah's stomach tightened. Immediate summons were never good news. She found Commander Hayes in the command center, surrounded by screens displaying satellite imagery and tactical overlays. The commander's expression was grim. "We have a situation," Hayes said without preamble. 6 Navy SEALs are trapped behind enemy lines. Standard rescue is impossible. The area's saturated with surface-to-air missiles and radar installations. Every conventional approach has been war-gamed. They all end in catastrophic failure. Sarah studied the screens. The extraction point was deep in hostile territory, surrounded by overlapping radar coverage and armed patrols. It was a death trap. "When do I leave?" she asked. Hayes looked at her steadily. 2,200 hours. And Sarah, this one's not training. If you're detected, we lose the Ghosthawk program. If that happens, enemies will know our capabilities. We'll have to scrap 3 years of development and billions in research." "Understood, ma'am." At 2,200 hours, Sarah lifted off into the night. Her Ghosthawk whispered through the darkness, its specially designed rotors cutting the air with minimal acoustic signature. She flew nap of the earth, using terrain to mask her approach, the helicopter's advanced avionics painting a 3-dimensional picture of the landscape ahead. Crossing into hostile airspace, Sarah watched her radar warning receiver remain silent. The advanced stealth profile was working. She was a shadow moving through their defenses, undetected and untouchable. The infrared suppression systems kept her heat signature below the threshold of enemy sensors. The extraction zone appeared on her display. Sarah sat down in a tiny clearing, the Ghosthawk settling with barely a sound. Within 90 seconds, 6 exhausted SEALs scrambled aboard. "Let's go, Captain," the team leader shouted. Sarah didn't wait. She pulled pitch and the Ghosthawk lifted smoothly, accelerating into the night. Behind them, confused enemy forces scrambled, searching for an aircraft their radar couldn't see and their ears hadn't heard. The flight back was textbook. Sarah navigated through mountain passes and valleys, the Ghosthawk performing flawlessly. When she finally touched down at the forward operating base, emergency crews and brass were waiting. Commander Hayes stood at the forefront, her expression unreadable. As Sarah shut down the systems and climbed out, she expected debriefing, paperwork, the usual post-mission routine. Instead, Hayes called the entire squadron to formation. "For months, you've all wondered about Captain Mitchell's helicopter," Hayes announced, her voice carrying across the tarmac. "You've made jokes. You've questioned why we'd keep such an outdated aircraft in service." The assembled pilots shifted uncomfortably. Hayes gestured toward the helicopter. "What Captain Mitchell flies isn't a standard Black Hawk. It's an HH-60U Ghosthawk, one of the most advanced stealth helicopters ever created. Tonight, she completed an extraction mission that was deemed impossible by every tactical analysis team. She brought back 6 Navy SEALs from behind enemy lines without being detected once." Silence fell over the formation. "Let this be a lesson," Hayes continued. "The most effective weapons aren't always the ones that look impressive. Sometimes the greatest strength is being underestimated." As the squadron dispersed, Sarah saw the looks of newfound respect, mixed with embarrassment from those who'd mocked her. Lieutenant Commander Jackson approached, extending his hand. "I owe you an apology, Captain," he said quietly. Sarah shook his hand. "No apology necessary, sir. You helped sell the cover story." Walking back to her Ghosthawk, Sarah ran her hand along its fuselage. Let them think it was ordinary. Let them underestimate what she flew. In the shadows, away from glory and recognition, she and her whisper-quiet helicopter would continue doing the impossible. 3 weeks after the rescue mission, Sarah Mitchell found herself in a conference room she'd never seen before. Deep beneath the Pentagon, the space had no windows, no identifying markers, just reinforced walls and a single table surrounded by high-ranking officers whose combined stars could have formed their own constellation. "Captain Mitchell," began Admiral Richard Thornton, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. "Your performance has attracted attention at the highest levels. The Ghosthawk program was designed as a defensive asset, rescue, reconnaissance, extraction. But recent intelligence suggests we need to expand its operational parameters." Sarah sat straighter in her chair. "Sir." A woman in civilian clothes spoke next. Sarah recognized her from classified briefings, Director Elizabeth Chen from the Defense Intelligence Agency. "We've identified a high-value target, a weapons developer who's been selling advanced missile guidance systems to hostile nations. He's currently hiding in a compound that's virtually impenetrable, 3 layers of radar coverage, automated defense systems, and a private army. We need someone to get in, extract critical intelligence from his servers, and get out without starting World War III." "With respect, ma'am," Sarah said carefully, "I'm a pilot, not a field operative." "We're not asking you to go in personally," Admiral Thornton interjected. "But we need the Ghosthawk to insert our team. The problem is that this individual, Viktor Kozlov, has sources inside multiple intelligence agencies. Every time we've planned an operation, he's known we were coming. We've had 3 teams compromised in the past 18 months. Director Chen pulled up a holographic display showing a fortified estate in the Caucasus Mountains. The only people who know about this operation are in this room, and the only aircraft that can penetrate his defenses undetected is yours, Captain." Sarah studied the imagery. The compound was a fortress, perched on a mountain ridge with clear sightlines in every direction. The approach corridors were nightmares of overlapping radar coverage and visual observation posts. "When?" she asked. 72 hours, Admiral Thornton replied. "You'll be operating with a 4-person team from Delta Force. Call sign, Phantom Unit. They're the best we have at close quarters intelligence gathering." The meeting lasted 3 hours. Sarah absorbed tactical maps, weather patterns, enemy force dispositions, and contingency plans. By the time she emerged into the fluorescent-lit corridor, her head was spinning with information. Commander Hayes was waiting outside. "Walk with me, Sarah." They moved through the secure corridors in silence, until Hayes led her into a small observation deck overlooking the Potomac River. "I recommended you for this mission," Hayes said quietly. "But I need to know, are you ready for this? What we're asking goes beyond rescue operations. This is offensive action deep in denied territory." Sarah watched the river flow past, considering her answer. "The SEALs I extracted, the team leader told me something before they left. He said they'd been in that valley for 3 days, listening to enemy patrols pass within meters of their position. They'd given up hope. Then they heard absolutely nothing, and suddenly I was there." She turned to Hayes. "He said I was a ghost that saved their lives. If I can do that again, if I can give another team a chance they wouldn't otherwise have, then yes, ma'am, I'm ready." Hayes nodded slowly. "The Ghosthawk isn't just an aircraft anymore, Sarah. It's becoming a legend. People are starting to call it the helicopter that doesn't exist. Some of our adversaries think it's disinformation, that we're spreading rumors about capabilities we don't actually have. That works in our favor." "Until we prove it's real," Sarah added. "Until we prove it's real," Hayes agreed. The next 72 hours were a blur of preparation. Sarah flew training runs in similar terrain, practiced approaches in different weather conditions, and memorized every detail of the operational area. She met with Phantom Unit's leader, Master Sergeant Marcus Webb, a compact man with intense eyes and an economy of movement that suggested coiled danger. "I've read your file, Captain," Webb said during their first briefing. "Impressive work on the SEAL extraction, but I need to know, have you ever been in a hot landing zone where people are actively shooting at you?" "Twice," Sarah replied. "Once in Syria, once in Yemen. Both times we took fire during extraction. Both times we got everyone out." Webb studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because Kozlov's people won't hesitate to light up the sky if they detect us. We'll have maybe 30 seconds from touchdown to insertion. I need you to hold position no matter what happens." "I'll be there," Sarah promised. The night of the operation arrived with overcast skies, perfect for their purposes. Sarah pre-flighted the Ghosthawk with meticulous care, checking every system twice. The helicopter had been fitted with additional countermeasures for this mission: advanced radar jammers, chaff dispensers, and infrared decoys. The armament had been upgraded too: door-mounted miniguns and a pair of Hellfire missiles, just in case. At 200 hours, Phantom Unit arrived. The 4 operators moved with practiced efficiency, loading their equipment into the Ghosthawk's cargo bay. Each man carried suppressed weapons, breaching tools, and specialized electronics for cracking Kozlov's server systems. "All systems green," Sarah reported over the secure channel. "Ready for departure." "Mission is go," came the response from the Tactical Operations Center. "Godspeed, Ghosthawk." Sarah lifted off into the darkness, the Ghosthawk rising silently into the night sky. The first leg of the journey took them over friendly territory, following a carefully planned route that avoided commercial air traffic and military installations. As they crossed into contested airspace, Sarah activated the full suite of stealth systems. The helicopter seemed to disappear into the night. The modified rotors cut through the air with a sound no louder than distant wind. The radar-absorbent materials coating the fuselage scattered electromagnetic waves, rendering the Ghosthawk nearly invisible to detection systems. Heat baffles in the exhaust system dissipated the thermal signature until the helicopter was cooler than the surrounding air. Sarah flew low, using terrain masking to avoid radar detection. The advanced avionics suite painted a three-dimensional picture of the landscape ahead, highlighting obstacles and potential threats. Twice, enemy patrol aircraft passed within 5 miles, their radar sweeping the area. Twice, the Ghosthawk remained undetected, a shadow moving through shadows. As they approached the target area, Sarah's hands remained steady on the controls. The compound appeared on her tactical display, a cluster of buildings surrounded by walls, guard towers, and enough firepower to repel a small army. 2 minutes to insertion point, Sarah announced quietly. In the cargo bay, Phantom Unit made final preparations. Master Sergeant Webb checked his team's equipment one last time, then gave Sarah a thumbs up through the cockpit window. 1 minute, Sarah called. The Ghosthawk descended toward a narrow valley adjacent to the compound. Sarah had studied this approach 100 times, memorizing every rock formation, every tree, every possible obstacle. Now, flying by night vision and instruments, she guided the helicopter down with absolute precision. The landing zone appeared, a small clearing barely large enough for the Ghosthawk's rotors. Sarah brought the helicopter down in a textbook landing, the skids touching Earth with barely a whisper. "Phantom Unit, you're clear," she said. The 4 operators disappeared into the darkness, moving toward the compound with deadly purpose. Sarah sat alone in the cockpit, engines at idle, every sense alert. The Ghosthawk's sensors monitored the compound, tracking guard movements and scanning for threats. Now came the hardest part, the waiting. Sarah's hand rested on the throttle, ready to lift off at a moment's notice. Minutes crawled past like hours. Through her headset, she could hear Phantom Unit's terse communications as they breached the compound's outer defenses. Then, cutting through the calm, 3 words that made her blood run cold. "Contact, contact, compromised." Sarah's finger was already on the collective before the second contact call finished echoing through her headset. The Ghosthawk's engines spooled up instantly, the advanced turbines responding with surgical precision. "Ghosthawk, abort mission. Get out of there." The Tactical Operations Center's voice crackled with urgency. "Negative," Sarah replied, her voice iron-calm despite her racing heart. "Phantom Unit is still inside. I'm not leaving without them." Through her helmet-mounted display, Sarah watched the compound erupt into chaos. Floodlights blazed to life, illuminating the grounds in harsh white light. Guard towers activated searchlights that began sweeping the surrounding terrain. On her threat display, multiple radar systems went active, searching for the intruders. "Phantom Lead Sitrep," Sarah demanded. Master Sergeant Webb's response came between bursts of gunfire. "We're pinned down in the server room. They've got us locked in. We need 30 seconds to finish the download." "You've got 20, Sarah snapped, already lifting the Ghosthawk off the ground. "I'm coming to you." What Sarah was about to attempt had never been done before, not even in training simulations. The Ghosthawk was designed for stealth insertion and extraction from secure landing zones, not direct assault on fortified positions. But Phantom Unit didn't have 30 seconds, and every moment Sarah hesitated was a moment closer to their capture or death. She pushed the Ghosthawk forward, keeping it low, using the valley's natural contours to mask her approach. The compound's outer wall loomed ahead, 12 feet of reinforced concrete topped with razor wire and surveillance cameras. "All stations, this is Ghosthawk," Sarah transmitted, going loud in 5, 4, 3. At 2, Sarah activated the helicopter's offensive systems. The targeting computer came online, painting hostile positions across her display. At 1, She pulled back on the cyclic, and the Ghosthawk rose above the wall like an avenging angel. The door gunners, two Air Force combat controllers who'd been silent passengers until now, opened fire immediately. The miniguns roared to life, 7.62 rounds shredding guard tower positions and suppressing enemy fire. Tracers lit up the night in deadly streams of light. Sarah spotted the building where Phantom Unit was trapped, a three-story structure with narrow windows and a flat roof. Guards were converging on it from multiple directions, assault rifles blazing. "Phantom lead, I'm coming in from the east. Get to the roof." "Roger, moving," Webb responded. Sarah brought the Ghosthawk around in a tight arc, the helicopter responding to her inputs with supernatural agility. The stealth modifications that made it whisper quiet also made it incredibly maneuverable. She lined up on a cluster of guards advancing toward Phantom Unit's position. "Guns, light them up," she ordered. The minigun spoke again. The advancing guards scattered, seeking cover. Sarah used the momentary chaos to position the Ghosthawk alongside the building's roof, holding the helicopter in a steady hover despite the turbulence from the compound's heat vents and the wind swirling between structures. The roof access door exploded outward. Master Sergeant Webb emerged first, providing covering fire as his team rushed out carrying a heavily laden equipment bag, the servers they'd come for. The four operators sprinted toward the Ghosthawk, but they weren't going to make it. More guards appeared on an adjacent rooftop, weapons raised. Sarah didn't hesitate. She slewed the Ghosthawk sideways, putting the helicopter's armored fuselage between the guards and Phantom Unit. Rounds impacted the Ghosthawk's hull, the distinctive crack of bullets hitting composite armor echoing through the airframe. "Move, move, move," Sarah shouted. The operators dove into the cargo bay. Webb was last aboard, still firing controlled bursts at pursuing guards. "We're in. Go, go, go." Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She pushed the cyclic forward and dumped the collective, the Ghosthawk dropping away from the building in a controlled fall that left her stomach somewhere above her. At 20 feet, she pulled out of the dive and accelerated hard, heading for the compound's perimeter. That's when the real trouble started. "Missile launch! Missile launch!" her threat warning system screamed. On the display, 2 surface-to-air missiles had been fired from concealed launchers within the compound. "Countermeasures," Sarah barked, punching the dispenser button. Chaff and flares erupted from the Ghosthawk's belly, creating a cloud of radar-reflective material and heat signatures designed to confuse the incoming missiles. The first missile took the bait, detonating harmlessly in the chaff cloud. The second kept coming. Sarah threw the Ghosthawk into a violent evasive maneuver, banking hard right and diving toward the valley floor. The helicopter's advanced fly-by-wire system compensated for inputs that would have torn a conventional aircraft apart. The missile tracked, closing rapidly. 300 meters, 200, 100. At the last possible second, Sarah pitched the Ghosthawk's nose up and activated the infrared decoy system. A brilliant magnesium flare shot out, burning at temperatures far exceeding the helicopter's exhaust signature. The missile seeker locked onto the decoy and detonated 50 meters behind them. The shockwave buffeted the Ghosthawk, but Sarah fought the controls and kept them airborne. "Are we clear?" Webb shouted from the cargo bay. "Not yet," Sarah replied, eyes scanning her instruments. More radar systems were coming online, not just from the compound, but from military installations across the region. Their cover was blown, and now every hostile force in a 100-mile radius knew something was in their airspace. Sarah activated the Ghosthawk's electronic warfare suite. Advanced jammers began transmitting, creating false radar returns and disrupting enemy targeting systems. The helicopter's stealth profile, so effective for infiltration, now worked in reverse, confusing enemy radars about the Ghosthawk's actual position and heading. She flew the most aggressive nap-of-the-earth route of her career, skimming ridgelines and threading through mountain passes at speeds that made her passengers grip their seats. Behind them, the compound receded into the distance, searchlights still sweeping the sky for an enemy that was already gone. 15 minutes into their escape, Sarah's threat receiver finally went quiet. They'd outrun the immediate pursuit, but they were still deep in hostile territory with a damaged aircraft and unknown forces potentially scrambling to intercept them. "Phantom lead, casualty report," Sarah called. "Minor injuries, nothing critical," Webb replied. "Ghosthawk, that was some of the finest flying I've ever seen. You saved our lives." "Thank me when we're home," Sarah said, checking her fuel status. The evasive maneuvers had burned through their reserves faster than planned. She ran quick calculations in her head. "We've got a problem. Fuel state is critical. We're not going to make it to the primary extraction point." Commander Hayes's voice cut into the channel from the Tactical Operations Center. "Ghosthawk, we're tracking your position. There's a secondary site 40 kilometers northeast of your current location. It's in contested territory, but it's your best option." Sarah altered course, watching her fuel gauge drop with each passing minute. The Ghosthawk's engines were running perfectly, but physics was physics. They were burning fuel faster than they could afford. "Secondary site in sight," she announced, spotting the small landing zone. Little more than a clearing in the forest with a single fuel truck and a security team waiting. She brought the Ghosthawk down carefully, conserving every drop of fuel. The skids touched Earth with a gentle bump, and Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. As the ground crew rushed forward to refuel the helicopter, Master Sergeant Webb appeared beside her cockpit window. His face was streaked with dirt and powder residue, but he was grinning. "Captain Mitchell," he said, "you just pulled off the most insane combat extraction I've ever witnessed, and we got what we came for." He held up a portable hard drive. "Kozlov's entire operation, client lists, transaction records, weapon specifications. This is going to shut down his network completely." Sarah nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her, but there was no time to rest. They still had to get home. "How long for refuel?" she asked the ground crew chief. 8 minutes, Captain." 8 minutes. Then they'd be airborne again, racing toward friendly territory with intelligence that could save countless lives. Sarah leaned back in her seat, running through post-combat checks on the Ghosthawk systems. Despite the missile near-miss and the bullet impacts, the helicopter had performed flawlessly. As the fuel truck's pumps hummed, Webb climbed back into the cargo bay with his team. Through her headset, Sarah heard them debriefing, their voices animated with the adrenaline of survival. She thought about the mockery she'd endured, the whispered jokes about her outdated helicopter. None of those pilots would ever know what had happened tonight. The mission would be classified at levels that ensured it would never appear in any official record. But Sarah knew, and that was enough. "Refuel complete, Captain," the ground crew chief reported. Sarah ran her hands over the controls one more time, feeling the Ghosthawk ready beneath her. "Phantom unit, secure for takeoff. We're going home." The helicopter lifted into the darkness once more, a ghost returning to the shadows from which it came. The dawn broke over Joint Base Andrews as the Ghosthawk touched down on a remote section of tarmac cordoned off by armed security. Sarah killed the engines, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline finally began to drain from her system. She'd been flying for 9 hours straight, threading through hostile airspace, refueling twice at clandestine forward operating bases, and dodging 2 separate attempts by foreign fighter jets to intercept them. But they'd made it home. Medical personnel rushed forward to check Phantom unit, though Master Sergeant Webb waved them off. "We're fine. Check the pilot. She's the one who kept us alive." Sarah climbed down from the cockpit, her legs unsteady. A flight surgeon immediately began examining her, shining lights in her eyes and checking her vital signs. "Elevated heart rate, signs of exhaustion," the surgeon noted. "Captain, when's the last time you slept?" Sarah couldn't remember. "Get her to the medical facility," Commander Hayes ordered, appearing seemingly from nowhere. But her tone softened as she addressed Sarah directly. "Outstanding work, Captain. The President has been briefed. The intelligence you recovered is already being analyzed." "The Ghosthawk took some damage," Sarah said, her professional instincts overriding her exhaustion. "Multiple bullet impacts to the fuselage, possible stress damage from the evasive maneuvers." "We'll take care of the bird," Hayes assured her. "Right now you need rest." Sarah wanted to protest, but her body had other ideas. The world tilted slightly, and strong hands caught her before she fell. The next thing she knew, she was in a hospital bed, staring at white ceiling tiles. She woke 12 hours later to find Commander Hayes sitting in a chair beside her bed, reading through a tablet. "Welcome back," Hayes said, setting the device aside. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Sarah admitted, sitting up slowly. "How long was I out?" "Half a day. Your body shut down the moment we got you somewhere safe." Hayes paused, her expression growing serious. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happens next." Sarah's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Hayes stood and walked to the window, looking out at the base below. "The intelligence you recovered from Kozlov's compound. It's bigger than we anticipated. His client list includes 3 hostile nations and 2 terrorist organizations. The weapon systems he was selling could have destabilized entire regions. Because of your mission, we've already begun coordinating with allied intelligence services to roll up his entire network." "That's good news, isn't it?" "It is," Hayes agreed. "But it comes with complications. Kozlov has connections in places we didn't expect, including within NATO. There are powerful people who profited from his operations, and they're going to be very interested in finding out how we got that intelligence." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "They're going to come looking for the Ghosthawk." "They already are," Hayes confirmed. "We've intercepted communications from 3 different intelligence services trying to identify the aircraft used in the operation. Satellite imagery shows the attack, but our stealth profile kept them from getting clean visuals. Right now, they think it might have been a new drone or an advanced special operations helicopter." "They can't know the truth," Sarah said quietly. "No, they can't," Hayes agreed. "Which brings me to the difficult part." She turned back to face Sarah. "The Ghosthawk program is being elevated to a higher classification level. The 3 birds at Area 51 are being moved to an even more secure location. And yours." Sarah's heart sank. "You're grounding me." "Not grounding, reassigning." Hayes pulled out a folder and handed it to Sarah. "The program is expanding. The success of your missions has convinced the Joint Chiefs that we need more Ghosthawks, more pilots. You're being promoted to major and assigned as the training commander for the new squadron." Sarah opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. Promotion orders, transfer papers, technical specifications for an upgraded Ghosthawk variant. "I don't want a desk job, Commander." "It's not a desk job," Hayes said firmly. "You'll be selecting and training the next generation of Ghosthawk pilots. You'll be flying the new variants, testing their capabilities, developing tactics and procedures. Sarah, you're not being benched. You're being asked to build something that will protect this country for decades to come." Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock at the door. A Marine guard entered, followed by a tall man in an expensive suit with a Secret Service pin on his lapel. "Major Mitchell," the man said, using her new rank before she'd even officially accepted it. "The President would like a word." Sarah looked at Hayes, who nodded encouragingly. She climbed out of bed, still in her flight suit, and followed the Secret Service agent down a series of corridors to a secure conference room. The President of the United States stood as she entered, accompanied by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Major Mitchell," the President said, extending his hand, I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. The intelligence you recovered has already prevented 3 planned terrorist attacks. Hundreds, possibly thousands of lives saved because of your courage." Sarah shook his hand, overwhelmed. "I was just doing my job, sir." "You did far more than that," the Secretary of Defense interjected. "You demonstrated that the Ghosthawk program is viable for offensive operations. That changes the strategic equation for special operations worldwide." The president gestured for everyone to sit. "Major, I'm going to be direct with you. What you've proven with the Ghosthawk has enormous implications for national security, but it also makes you a target. There are foreign intelligence services that would pay fortunes to know how we penetrated Kozlov's defenses. There are defense contractors who would kill to get their hands on the Ghosthawk's technology." "I understand, sir." "I'm not sure you do," the president said gently. "For the foreseeable future, your life is going to change dramatically. Enhanced security protocols, limited public exposure. Everything you do will be scrutinized through the lens of operational security." Sarah absorbed this, understanding the weight of what was being said. She'd become a keeper of secrets that could reshape modern warfare. The price of flying the Ghosthawk wasn't just the danger of the missions, it was the burden of living in the shadows. "Sir," she said carefully, "if I may ask, why are you telling me this personally?" The president smiled slightly. "Because I wanted you to understand how important this is, and because I wanted to give you a choice. You can accept the promotion and the new assignment, train the next generation, help expand the program. Or you can step away with full honors, return to conventional aviation, and live a normal life. Either way, your country owes you a debt of gratitude." Sarah thought about the 6 Navy SEALs she'd pulled from behind enemy lines. She thought about Phantom Unit and the intelligence that would save countless lives. She thought about the Ghosthawk, that remarkable machine that had become an extension of her own will. "Sir," she said, meeting the president's eyes, "I didn't join the military for a normal life. I joined to make a difference. If training the next squadron of Ghosthawk pilots means I can multiply that impact, then that's what I want to do." The president nodded, seeming pleased. "Then welcome to the next phase of your career, Major. The shadows are going to be your home for a long time." As Sarah left the meeting and returned to her quarters, she thought about what Hayes had said earlier. The Ghosthawk was becoming a legend, a helicopter that didn't exist, flown by pilots no one knew, accomplishing missions that would never be acknowledged. She looked out at the tarmac where her Ghosthawk sat, maintenance crews already swarming over it, repairing the battle damage and upgrading its systems. In the morning light, it looked ordinary, unremarkable. "Perfect." Sarah smiled to herself. Let the world think it was just another helicopter. She knew the truth, and soon she'd teach others to fly the same shadows she'd mastered. The legend of the Ghosthawk was just beginning. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a classified hangar at Groom Lake, watching 5 candidates file in for their first day of Ghosthawk training. They were the best of the best, hand-picked from elite units across all branches of the military. Each had been vetted through layers of security clearances and psychological evaluations. Each had proven themselves exceptional in conventional aviation. But exceptional wasn't enough, not for this. "Good morning," Sarah began, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "My name is Major Sarah Mitchell. For the next 12 weeks, I'm going to determine if you have what it takes to fly the most advanced helicopter in the world. Most of you won't make it." She watched their faces. 2 men, 3 women, a Marine Corps pilot with over 2,000 flight hours, an Army Night Stalker who'd flown countless combat missions, a Navy rescue swimmer turned aviator, an Air Force test pilot, and a National Guard pilot who'd somehow scored perfect marks on every simulation thrown at her. "Behind me are 3 HH-60U Ghosthawks," Sarah continued, gesturing to the helicopters that dominated the hangar floor. "They look like standard Black Hawks. That's intentional. Everything about these aircraft is designed to make adversaries underestimate them. But I need you to understand, these machines represent a paradigm shift in rotary wing aviation. She walked toward the nearest Ghosthawk, running her hand along its fuselage. Advanced composite materials that scatter radar, rotor blades designed to operate in near silence, heat suppression systems that make the aircraft cooler than ambient air, fly-by-wire controls that allow maneuvers impossible in conventional helicopters. This isn't just a helicopter, it's a precision instrument that requires complete mastery. Captain Jake Reeves, the Marine pilot, raised his hand. Major, with respect, we've all flown advanced aircraft. What makes this so different? Sarah smiled. She'd been waiting for that question. Follow me. She led them to a simulator bay, a room filled with full-motion cockpit replicas that could recreate any flight scenario imaginable. Captain Reeves, you're up. Simple scenario. Night insertion into hostile territory. Your mission is to land, hold position for 30 seconds, then extract. Think you can handle it? Reeves's confidence was evident. Yes, ma'am. Then let's see it. 20 minutes later, Reeves climbed out of the simulator, his flight suit soaked with sweat. He'd crashed 3 times, been shot down twice, and successfully completed the mission 0 times. What the hell was that? He demanded, frustration evident in his voice. That, Sarah said calmly, was the Ghosthawk on the easiest difficulty setting, with only basic stealth systems active in optimal weather conditions. Now imagine doing it for real in a sandstorm with surface-to-air missiles tracking you. The confidence had drained from all 5 faces. The Ghosthawk demands perfection, Sarah continued. One mistake, one moment of overconfidence, and you're dead. More importantly, you've compromised the most classified aircraft program in U.S. military history. The question isn't whether you're good pilots, you all are. The question is whether you can become something more. Over the following weeks, Sarah pushed them harder than they'd ever been pushed. Flight training began at 400 and often lasted past midnight. They flew in every weather condition, in complete darkness, with systems deliberately failed to test their emergency procedures. Sarah was relentless, demanding instant responses to threats, perfect execution of maneuvers, and absolute mastery of the Ghosthawk's capabilities. 2 candidates washed out in the first month. The Navy pilot struggled with the aggressive flying style required for combat insertions. The Air Force test pilot couldn't adapt to operating in communications blackout conditions. That left 3. Sarah found herself particularly impressed by Lieutenant Rachel Torres, the National Guard pilot. Torres was 28, had grown up flying crop dusters on her family's farm in Kansas, and possessed an almost supernatural feel for aircraft dynamics. How do you do it? Sarah asked her one evening after a particularly challenging training flight. Torres had just completed a simulated extraction under fire that would have challenged pilots with twice her experience. Torres considered the question. I grew up flying planes that were held together with duct tape and prayer, ma'am. My dad taught me that an aircraft is alive. You don't fight it, you work with it. The Ghosthawk is the same, just more sophisticated. You listen to what it's telling you. Sarah recognized something of herself in Torres, that same instinctive connection with the aircraft that made the difference between good pilots and exceptional ones. Then came the final evaluation. Sarah received the call at 200. Commander Hayes's voice was tense. We have a situation. A CIA asset is trapped in Yemen with intelligence on an imminent terrorist attack. Conventional extraction is impossible. The area's crawling with hostiles. We need to send a Ghosthawk. Sarah was already pulling on her flight suit. I can be airborne in 20 minutes. Negative, Hayes said. This one's not for you, Sarah. Your students need real-world experience. I'm authorizing you to select 1 pilot for the mission. They'll have backup. You'll be flying command position in a second Ghosthawk, but the primary extraction will be their responsibility. Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't a training exercise. Lives hung in the balance, and she was being asked to trust a student pilot with a mission that could go catastrophically wrong. She thought about the three remaining candidates. Captain Reeves had the most combat experience. Lieutenant Jessica Park, the Night Stalker, had the best technical scores. But Torres had something the others lacked. Lieutenant Torres, Sarah decided, she's ready. 4 hours later, Sarah flew in loose formation with Torres as they crossed into Yemeni airspace. Torres' Ghosthawk was a shadow ahead and below her, skimming the desert terrain with confidence that belied her limited experience. Ghost 2, this is Ghost 1, Sarah transmitted. You're looking good, remember your training. Copy Ghost 1, Torres replied, her voice steady. They approached the extraction point, a bombed-out building on the outskirts of a city controlled by hostile forces. Intelligence indicated the asset was hiding in the basement, with enemy patrols actively searching the area. Sarah watched through her night vision as Torres brought her Ghosthawk down in the building's courtyard, a space barely large enough for the rotor disc. It was a perfect landing, smooth, controlled, exactly where it needed to be. Then everything went wrong. Enemy technicals, pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns, came screaming around the corner, their weapons blazing. The CIA asset burst from the building but stumbled, hit by incoming fire. Sarah's finger hovered over the trigger for her own weapon system, ready to intervene, but Torres was already moving. The younger pilot pivoted her Ghosthawk, using the helicopter's bulk as a shield. The door gunners opened fire, suppressing the technicals. Torres held position despite the incoming rounds hammering her fuselage, refusing to abandon the wounded asset. The CIA operative crawled toward the helicopter. Torres' crew chief jumped out, grabbed the wounded man, and hauled him aboard. Bullets sparked off the Ghosthawk's armor. Ghost 2 is extracting, Torres called, her voice still calm despite the chaos. She lifted off smoothly, accelerating away from the kill zone as Sarah provided covering fire. Within minutes, they were clear, racing toward friendly territory with the wounded asset receiving emergency medical care in Torres cargo bay. Back at base, as medics rushed the CIA operative to surgery, Sarah approached Torres. The young pilot's hands were finally shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. That was exceptional work, Lieutenant, Sarah said quietly. Torres looked at her Ghosthawk, counting the bullet holes. I almost got us killed. No, Sarah corrected. You saved a life under impossible conditions. That's what Ghosthawk pilots do. She paused. Welcome to the squadron, Lieutenant. You've earned your place. As dawn broke over the desert base, Sarah looked at her three students, now her fellow pilots. The Ghosthawk squadron was no longer just an idea. It was real. And their legend was spreading. The Ghosthawk squadron's success came at a price Sarah hadn't anticipated. 3 months after Lieutenant Torres' baptism by fire in Yemen, intelligence reports began filtering through classified channels that made Commander Hayes' face grow pale. They know, Hayes said, sliding a folder across the conference table to Sarah. Not everything, but enough to be dangerous. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the intercepted communications. Chinese intelligence services had compiled a dossier on what they called the Phantom helicopter, a stealth rotorcraft with capabilities that shouldn't exist. Russian military analysts had cross-referenced reports from Syria, Yemen, and the Caucasus, identifying a pattern of impossible extractions and surgical strikes. They're hunting us, Sarah said quietly. Not just hunting, Hayes corrected. They're setting traps, look at this. She pulled up a satellite image showing a compound in North Korea. High-value defector, a nuclear scientist who wants to come over to our side. He's reached out through back channels, provided intelligence that checks out. The extraction point he's proposing is perfect, isolated, defensible, minimal radar coverage. Sarah studied the image, her instincts screaming warning. It's too perfect. Exactly, Hayes agreed. Our analysts give it an 80% probability of being a trap specifically designed to capture or destroy a ghost hawk. They want the technology, Sarah, and they're willing to sacrifice one of their own scientists to get it. So we decline, Sarah said. Tell the scientist we can't help him. Hayes shook her head. The intelligence he's offering is critical, details on North Korea's miniaturized warhead program. If what he's claiming is true, they're 6 months away from having nuclear-capable missiles that can reach the continental United States. We can't ignore that. Sarah felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. You want us to go anyway. Use the trap against them. The Joint Chiefs are divided, Hayes admitted. Half want to scrub the mission entirely. The other half see it as an opportunity to demonstrate that even when our adversaries know we're coming, they still can't stop us. And what do you think, Commander? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. I think if we back down now, every two-bit dictator and terrorist cell will start setting traps, trying to draw us out. The Ghost Hawk's greatest advantage has always been that people didn't believe it existed. Now that they know it's real, we need to prove it's still untouchable. Sarah looked at the satellite image again, this time with a tactical eye. The compound was in a valley surrounded by mountains, natural funnels that would limit their approach options. She could see where they'd position anti-aircraft batteries, where snipers would set up, how they'd try to box in any extraction attempt. I'll need operational control, she said finally. Complete authority over mission planning and execution. You'll have it, Hayes promised. 2 days later, Sarah stood before her squadron, now expanded to 8 pilots, 16 crew chiefs and gunners, and a full maintenance team. They'd moved from the cramped facilities at Groom Lake to a purpose-built complex in Nevada that officially didn't exist on any map. Listen up, Sarah began, pulling up the mission briefing on the main display. North Korea, high-value defector extraction. And yes, before anyone asks, it's almost certainly a trap. Captain Reeves whistled low, and we're going anyway. We're going anyway, Sarah confirmed, but not the way they expect. She clicked to the next slide, showing a tactical overlay. They're anticipating a single Ghost Hawk, maybe 2. Standard insertion pattern, low approach through the valley, quick grab and extract. They'll have the valley covered with overlapping fields of fire, radar installations designed to detect low-flying aircraft, possibly even electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable our systems. Lieutenant Torres leaned forward, studying the display. So we don't use the valley. Exactly, Sarah said, highlighting a mountain ridge to the east. We come in from above, all 4 Ghost Hawks flying in formation at altitude. We violate every stealth protocol, make ourselves visible on their radar. The room fell silent. Lieutenant Park spoke up hesitantly. Major, that's suicide. They'll have every missile battery in the province locked on us. They will, Sarah agreed. Which is why Ghost Hawks 2, 3, and 4 will be decoys. Enhanced radar reflectors, heat signature amplifiers making them look like they're carrying full loads, while their entire defense network is focused on you. She clicked to another slide showing a terrain map. Ghost 1, my bird will already be on the ground. We'll insert 12 hours before the operation begins, land on this ridgeline 30 kilometers from the target and go completely dark. When you draw their attention, we'll fly nap of the earth using terrain masking, grab the defector, and be gone before they realize what happened. Reeves studied the plan, grudging admiration in his eyes. Using the Ghost Hawks as bait, that's either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both, Sarah admitted. But it's our best shot. The decoy birds will have full countermeasure suites. They can handle anything short of a direct hit. And I'm betting North Korea won't risk shooting down aircraft in their own airspace without positive identification. Too much risk of international incident if they're wrong. Over the next 72 hours, they refined the plan obsessively. Sarah flew the insertion route a dozen times in the simulator, memorizing every contour of the terrain. The maintenance crews worked around the clock, installing additional countermeasures on the decoy Ghosthawks and stripping every ounce of unnecessary weight from Sarah's bird to maximize its stealth profile. The night before the mission, Lieutenant Torres found Sarah in the hangar, running pre-flight checks for the third time. "Can't sleep either?" Torres asked. Sarah smiled wryly. "Too much adrenaline. You should rest, Rachel. Tomorrow's going to be intense." "I know," Torres said, but she didn't leave. "Major, can I ask you something? When you flew that first mission, the SEAL extraction that started all this, were you scared?" Sarah considered lying, then decided Torres deserved the truth. "Terrified. I kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong, all the ways I could fail them. But you know what I realized? The fear doesn't go away. You just learn to fly with it. And if this is a trap, if they have something we haven't anticipated, then we adapt," Sarah said firmly. "That's what makes us different from conventional pilots. We don't just follow procedures, we write new ones in real time. The Ghosthawk gives us capabilities our enemies can barely imagine. Tomorrow, we're going to prove that even their best-laid trap can't hold us." Torres nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Thank you, Major." As the younger pilot walked away, Sarah returned to her pre-flight checks, running her hands over the Ghosthawk's controls. Tomorrow, she'd be flying solo into one of the most dangerous airspaces in the world, betting everything on stealth, skill, and the belief that the hunter could become the hunted. 12 hours before the mission launch, Sarah lifted off under cover of darkness. The Ghosthawk climbed silently through the night sky, crossing over the Pacific Ocean toward the Korean peninsula. Flying alone, with no backup and no margin for error, Sarah felt the familiar cocktail of fear and exhilaration that came with every mission. This was what she'd trained for. This was what the Ghosthawk was built to do. She flew north through the darkness, a shadow hunting shadows, carrying the weight of secrets that could change the balance of world power. Below, the ocean rolled endlessly. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness, a trap waited to be sprung. Sarah checked her weapon systems one final time and smiled coldly. "Let them try." Sarah crossed into North Korean airspace at 3:47 hours, flying at wave-top height over the Yellow Sea before banking inland. The Ghosthawk's terrain-following radar painted the landscape in ghostly green detail. Fishing villages sleeping in the darkness, military installations with their searchlights sweeping the sky, roads empty, except for the occasional military convoy. She climbed when she hit the coastline, using the mountains for cover. The Ghosthawk responded to her inputs with surgical precision, banking through valleys and skimming ridgelines with meters to spare. Every movement was calculated, every course correction designed to minimize her radar cross-section. At 4:12 hours, Sarah identified her landing zone, a granite shelf jutting from a mountainside, concealed from below by dense forest and from above by an overhanging cliff face. She brought the Ghosthawk down in the darkness, settling onto the rock with barely a whisper. "Ghost 1 on the ground," she transmitted on the encrypted satellite link. "Going dark." She shut down the engines, letting silence envelope the helicopter. For the next 12 hours she would wait, no communications, no movement, nothing that could betray her position. The Ghosthawk's passive sensors remained active, monitoring the area for threats, but otherwise the aircraft was as lifeless as the rocks surrounding it. Sarah climbed out of the cockpit and stretched, working the stiffness from her muscles. Her crew chief, Master Sergeant David Chen, was already camouflaging the helicopter with thermal netting that would blend it into the mountainside. "Cozy spot, Major," Chen said quietly. "Reminds me of camping trips with my dad, except with more surface-to-air missiles." Sarah smiled despite the tension. Chen had been with her since the beginning, a veteran crew chief who could repair a Ghosthawk with duct tape and determination if needed. For this mission, He was her only companion, just the two of them, deep in enemy territory, waiting for nightfall. The hours crawled past. Sarah monitored the tactical network, watching as her squadron departed from their staging area in South Korea. Ghosthawks 2, 3, and 4 flew in loose formation, their enhanced signatures making them appear on North Korean radar exactly as planned. Through her headset, she heard the chatter of North Korean air defense coordinators, their voices tense and excited. They detected the incoming helicopters. The trap was being set. At 1900 hours, as dusk settled over the mountains, Sarah began her pre-flight checks. Every system responded perfectly. The Ghosthawk was ready. "All stations, this is Ghost 1, she transmitted. "Commencing approach." She lifted off from the mountain shelf, keeping the Ghosthawk in ground effect as she navigated through the valleys. In her headset, she could hear the symphony of the decoy operation, her pilots radioing false positions, North Korean interceptors scrambling, missile batteries coming online. The defector's location was a farmhouse on the outskirts of a small village. Intelligence had identified him as Dr. Kim Sung-ho, a senior physicist in North Korea's nuclear weapons program. According to his communiques, he'd be waiting in the farmhouse's courtyard at precisely 1930 hours. Sarah approached from the east, using a dry riverbed as a natural corridor. The Ghosthawk flew 15 feet above the ground, its downwash kicking up dust and debris. On her threat display, she could see multiple radar installations searching the sky, all of them focused 40 kilometers west, where her decoy squadron was painting false targets across their screens. The farmhouse appeared ahead. Sarah's heart rate spiked as she identified the courtyard and the lone figure standing in the center, waving his arms. Too easy. The thought flashed through her mind even as she began her landing approach. That's when she saw them. Concealed positions in the surrounding buildings. The telltale heat signatures of personnel waiting in ambush. And worse, a mobile radar installation cunningly hidden beneath thermal camouflage, its dish tracking her approach. "Trap," Sarah barked into her radio. "Ghost 1 is compromised." She had seconds to decide. Abort and leave the defector, who might be genuine, or continue the extraction and fight her way out. Sarah didn't hesitate. She'd come too far to turn back now. She brought the Ghosthawk down hard in the courtyard, the skids hitting earth with a jarring impact. Chen, covering fire. The crew chief opened up with the minigun, raking the concealed positions. Tracers lit up the twilight as North Korean soldiers returned fire, but Chen's suppression kept their heads down. The figure in the courtyard ran toward the helicopter. Sarah could see his face now, middle-aged, terrified, carrying a briefcase that supposedly contained years of nuclear secrets. But something was wrong. The man's movements were too controlled, too military, and his eyes, they held calculation, not fear. It's not him, Sarah realized too late. The man reached the Ghosthawk, and instead of climbing aboard, he threw the briefcase underneath the helicopter. Sarah saw the telltale blink of an LED timer. Bomb! She pulled collective, hauling the Ghosthawk into the air even as the device detonated. The explosion caught the tail rotor, shrapnel tearing through composite armor. Warning lights blazed across her instrument panel. "Tail rotor damaged," Chen shouted. "We're losing hydraulics." The Ghosthawk yawed violently, wanting to spin. Sarah fought the controls, using every ounce of her skill to maintain directional control. A conventional helicopter would have been unflyable, but the Ghosthawk's advanced fly-by-wire system compensated, the computers working overtime to keep them airborne. Gunfire erupted from every direction. The trap had been sprung perfectly. They'd waited until she was committed, damaged her aircraft, and now they were moving in for the kill. "Ghost 2, this is Ghost 1, Sarah transmitted, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I need immediate support, danger close." "On our way," Lieutenant Tor's voice crackled back. ETA 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Sarah had to survive 4 minutes while flying a crippled helicopter through a firestorm. She pushed the Ghosthawk forward, accelerating low over the village. Buildings blurred past. She could hear the impacts of bullets striking her fuselage, could smell smoke from damaged systems. A missile launch alarm screamed. Shoulder-fired anti-aircraft weapon tracking from behind. Sarah jinked hard left, dumping flares. The missile took the bait and detonated off her starboard side, the shockwave buffeting the already struggling helicopter. She kept flying, muscle memory and instinct taking over where conscious thought would have been too slow. Chen was still on the minigun, laying down, suppressing fire on anything that moved. "Major, we've got vehicles pursuing, technical trucks with mounted weapons." Sarah checked her tactical display. 2 pickup trucks racing down the road behind them, heavy machine guns firing streams of tracers. "Hold on," she warned. She yanked the Ghosthawk into a canyon, flying between rock walls with barely 10 feet of clearance on either side. The pursuing vehicles couldn't follow. They screeched to a halt at the canyon entrance, their gunners firing uselessly at the rapidly disappearing helicopter. But Sarah's problems weren't over. The damaged tail rotor was degrading fast, and she could feel the Ghosthawk's handling becoming increasingly unstable. Every control input required more effort, more compensation. "Ghost 1, Ghost 2, Tors transmitted. We've got visual on your position, coming in hot." Sarah looked up through her canopy and saw the most beautiful sight of her military career. 3 Ghosthawks screaming over the ridge, their door gunners already engaging targets on the ground. Tor's helicopter pulled alongside, matching Sarah's speed. "Major, you're trailing smoke. How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Sarah admitted. "I'm not sure I can make it to friendly territory." "Then we'll clear you a path," Tors said firmly. "Ghost 3, Ghost 4, form on Ghost 1. We're escorting her home." The 4 Ghosthawks flew in diamond formation, racing south through the gathering darkness. Behind them, North Korean air defenses were in chaos. Their trap had failed, and now they had 4 stealth helicopters operating freely in their airspace. Sarah wrestled with her controls, sweat pouring down her face. The Ghosthawk was dying beneath her, systems failing one by one, but she kept it flying through sheer determination, refusing to let the aircraft fall. The border appeared on her navigation display, 5 kilometers, 3, 1. Crossing into friendly airspace, Tors announced triumphantly. Sarah felt the tension drain from her shoulders, only to have it replaced by alarm as her last working hydraulic system failed. The Ghosthawk's controls went slack in her hands. "I've lost flight controls," she transmitted, going down. The helicopter began an uncontrolled descent toward the South Korean countryside below. The Ghosthawk plummeted toward the earth, spinning uncontrollably. Sarah's hands worked frantically over the controls, trying every backup system, every emergency procedure she'd ever learned. Nothing responded. "Brace for impact," she shouted to Chen. In the 3 seconds before they hit, Sarah's mind flashed through a dozen memories. Her first solo flight, the day she'd been selected for the Ghosthawk program, the faces of the people she'd saved. Then training took over, pure instinct guiding her hands. She had no hydraulics, no flight controls, but she still had engines. Sarah manipulated the throttles individually, using differential power to influence the helicopter's attitude. It was like trying to steer a falling anvil with a feather, but it was something. The Ghosthawk's nose came up slightly, not enough to prevent a crash, but enough to change a fatal impact into a merely catastrophic one. They hit hard. The helicopter slammed into a rice paddy, the impact driving Sarah forward against her harness with bone-crushing force. The world became a chaos of tearing metal, shattering glass, and the shriek of composite materials being destroyed. The Ghosthawk skipped like a stone across the flooded field, shedding pieces with each impact, before finally grinding to a halt in a spray of mud and water. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of hot metal cooling and the ticking of the dying engines. "Chen," Sarah croaked, her ribs screaming in protest. "Chen, report." "Still alive," came the weak response from behind her. "Pretty sure I broke something, maybe everything." Sarah unbuckled with trembling hands and forced her way out of the crumpled cockpit. The Ghosthawk was ruined. The tail boom had separated completely, the main rotor blades were shattered stumps, and the fuselage looked like it had been through a compactor. But they'd survived. Within minutes, Tor's Ghosthawk landed nearby, its rotors whipping the rice paddy into a frenzy. The lieutenant sprinted toward them, medics in tow. "Major, are you injured?" Sarah took inventory: bruised ribs, possible concussion, various cuts and scrapes, nothing life-threatening. "I'll live. Check Chen first." As the medics worked, Sarah stared at the wreckage of her Ghosthawk. The helicopter that had carried her through impossible missions, that had become an extension of her own will, was destroyed. She felt an unexpected grief, as if she'd lost a trusted companion. Tor stood beside her, following her gaze. "I'm sorry, Major. I know what that bird meant to you." "It's just a machine," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No," Tors corrected gently. "It was the machine, the one that proved the program works, the one that made believers out of all of us." South Korean military police arrived within the hour, securing the crash site with a perimeter that pushed curious locals back. A U.S. Air Force recovery team followed shortly after, already preparing to load the Ghosthawk's wreckage for transport back to the States. Every piece would be analyzed, every failure mode studied. Sarah and Chen were medevaced to a military hospital in Seoul, where doctors confirmed her diagnosis: cracked ribs, severe bruising, mild concussion. Chen had it worse, a broken arm and compressed vertebrae, but both would recover fully. Commander Hayes arrived the next morning, her expression unreadable as she entered Sarah's hospital room. "Walk me through it," Hayes said without preamble. Sarah recounted the mission in detail: the perfect setup, the recognition that the defector was a plant, the split-second decision to land anyway, the bomb. Hayes listened without interruption, taking notes on a secure tablet. "The decoy operation worked perfectly," Hayes said when Sarah finished. "Ghosthawks 2, 3, and 4 tied up North Korean air defenses for 90 minutes. They never even got close to your real position until it was too late." "But we lost a Ghosthawk," Sarah pointed out, "and we didn't get the defector." "We lost a helicopter," Hayes corrected. "Not a pilot, not a crew chief, and actually," she pulled up a file on her tablet, "we did get the defector. The real Dr. Kim Sung-ho contacted us 6 hours ago through a different channel. He watched the entire operation from a safe house 10 kilometers away. The fact that we attempted the extraction, even knowing it was likely a trap, convinced him we were serious. He's providing intelligence right now." Sarah absorbed this, trying to reconcile the mission's chaotic end with what was apparently being called a success. "More importantly," Hayes continued, "you demonstrated something critical. Even when they knew we were coming, even when they set the perfect trap, we still got in and out. Yes, you lost the helicopter, but you survived. That sends a message to every hostile intelligence service in the world. The Ghosthawk program can't be stopped by conventional means." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Hayes's expression softened slightly. "Now you recover. The doctors say 6 weeks before you're cleared to fly again. In the meantime, the program continues. We're accelerating production on the next generation Ghosthawks, incorporating everything we learned from your crash. Improved redundancy systems, enhanced armor, better emergency flight controls." She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. "There's something else. The Secretary of Defense wants to expand the program significantly. Instead of a single squadron, they're proposing a full wing, 3 squadrons, 24 Ghosthawks total. They want you to command it." Sarah's eyes widened. "Commander, I'm a pilot, not an administrator." "You're the person who proved this program works," Hayes countered. "You trained the pilots who are currently flying successful missions across 3 continents. You've become the face of the Ghosthawk, Sarah, whether you intended to or not." Over the next few days, as Sarah recuperated, she received a steady stream of visitors. Tours came with the rest of the squadron, bringing flowers and irreverent get-well cards. Master Sergeant Webb stopped by with a bottle of expensive scotch smuggled past the nurses. Even the president sent a personal message, thanking her for her service and informing her that she was being promoted to lieutenant colonel. But the visit that meant the most came from Chen, wheeling himself into her room with his arm in a cast and a neck brace supporting his spine. "Heard you're getting a promotion," he said, settling his wheelchair beside her bed. "Does this mean I have to call you Colonel now?" "Only if you want me to find a new crew chief," Sarah replied with a smile. Chen's expression grew serious. "You going to take the command position, the full wing?" Sarah looked out the window at the Seoul skyline, thinking about everything that had brought her to this moment. The mockery she'd endured, the missions she'd flown, the lives she'd saved, the helicopter she'd lost. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me just wants to fly, but another part knows that if I don't take this, someone else will, someone who might not understand what makes the Ghosthawk special." "It's not about the technology," Chen said quietly. "Never was. It's about the people willing to fly into the impossible because someone needs saving. That's what you built, Major, sorry, Colonel. That's what you need to protect." Sarah nodded slowly. Chen was right. The Ghosthawk program wasn't about advanced helicopters or stealth technology. It was about a group of pilots who'd learned to operate in the shadows, accomplishing missions others deemed impossible. "Tell Commander Hayes I accept," Sarah said finally, "but on one condition." "What's that?" Sarah grinned despite her cracked ribs. "I still get to fly." 2 months later, Sarah stood in a different hangar, this one 3 times the size of the original facility at Groom Lake. Before her sat not 3 or 4 Ghosthawks, but an entire flight line of them. The new Gen 4 models incorporated lessons learned from her crash, featuring redundant flight control systems and modular armor that could be quickly replaced after battle damage. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, commander of the 1st Special Operations Aviation Wing Stealth, looked at her squadron commanders, Torres, Reeves, and Park, each now leading their own teams of elite pilots. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah announced, "we have work to do." Around the world, in places where darkness gathered and hope seemed lost, people would soon whisper about helicopters that appeared from nowhere, ghosts in the night that saved lives and vanished without a trace. The legend was no longer growing. It had taken flight.